G'day guys and welcome to FanCast, where we have a proper footy chat. We're here with episode 1 of 2024 in a new setup, if you don't mind, with some new faces, or one new face in particular. We'll start off, of course, with our regular co-host. How's it going, Big J?
Oh, mate, I'm happy to be here. As you say, new location, new vibe. I can see the stuff on the walls this time instead of being in a grey kind of dungeon space. So happy to be here.
Excellent. The glasses do work, confirmed. And of course, we are joined by Nick. How is it going, Nick? Thanks for coming on, man.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Good to be here, guys. Sorry I'll let you guys know late I was popping in.
It's all right.
I was actually meant to meet up with a girl tonight and she flaked on me. So, yeah, we're here now. So it was a good backup option.
Let me tell her off. What's her number?
Nah,
I'm
I'm only joking. She didn't flake. She's actually sick.
She's sick?
Yeah. But I've been flaked before. Like an actual proper flake. I think everyone has as a guy.
Yeah.
What's your worst one?
I've had some pretty bad ones. I think maybe just like you turn up, you start off, you're like, yeah, I'll have a drink or two. Get stuff ready, and then like, nah, don't even turn up. I'm like, yeah, 45 minutes late, no messages, no calls. What are you gonna do?
I'm not going to talk about what my worst one is, but we're here to talk all things footy. Of course, we are joined by Nick from Back to the Bench, and we are looking to talk about everything to do with round 0. It has come. It's the first time that we've had to talk about a round 0, an opening round in football, which is absolutely unheard of. But when we did hear about it, I think there was a lot of noise that came out from that.
Yeah, I've actually heard, because obviously NRL is getting played, or was played in America last week, because obviously those guys were out of town. Then you got those Queenslanders and the New South Wales people who don't have sport for that weekend. I thought the AFL would come in and play AFL whilst NRL was away, and obviously that's not to be the case because there's like 6, I think, New South Wales and Queensland teams playing this weekend. So obviously they stuffed that fixture up pretty bad.
Classic AFL stuffing something up.
Yeah, to be honest, it doesn't really feel like a real round. I think just because so many teams are out of action, and when you don't have your first game in Melbourne, you don't really have that start with a bang sort of atmosphere like it does with Carlton and Richmond. So it almost feels like we're in a pre-season game still with these games kicking off. So hopefully that's not the case for the Blues, my Blues this week, because it's important for us to get off to a good start. But yeah, we'll see how it pans out because it's interesting to see how it started.
I was about to say, of course, he feels that way without Carlton playing in the first round, in the first game.
I really didn't mind. You know, when, who was it, Melbourne and GWS, was it, that after COVID year they played like the grand final rematch in Melbourne? I didn't mind that. Kind of just something different, create that tradition. No offence to Carlton Richmond, but if they're always the headliner every year, all the time, for a non-Carlton Richmond supporter, it does get stale a little bit. But to do round 0... it messes up the AFL, messes up the fixture, messes up us in Supercoach, Joe. It's just like, mate, why bother sometimes? And then for the first 6 weeks, four weeks as a bye.
I always find it amazing that the fact that all these teams who aren't playing in round 0 that have the bye, like, come on, you can't say you're having a break from having a break.
Yeah, I think the way they've mastered the round 0 is, so obviously you got the 2 preliminary finalists, or 4, I should say, from last year.
Yep.
So you got Carlton and Brisbane rematch, and then you got Collingwood and Giants rematching. Then the main game, Melbourne versus Swans, obviously the 2 big cities, Melbourne and Sydney, so the battle of the 2 cities. And then they got Gold Coast versus Richmond, Dimmer's first game against Richmond back. So I think the way they've fixtured it is pretty much on purpose to make sure they're all like big battles and have some sort of meaning towards them.
Yeah, I can definitely see they're kind of... I think they were pretty lucky that Dimmer went to Gold Coast and the fixturing happened that way.
Happens to be a big club as well,
yeah.
Richmond to Gold Coast.
But 100% can see them really, like, if it is just there to promote it, they're not going to have North Melbourne versus GWS because no one's going to turn up to that game. So definitely kind of see what they're trying to do there.
And they've sunk so much money into the Gold Coast side. I mean, everybody knows that the Gold Coast are the AFL's love child, and they're trying to do everything they can to make it work. It's been really hard to break into that Queensland market outside of Brisbane. I know there's a lot of football fans up in the state. I've spoken to a few of them, but they keep saying it's so hard to barrack for a team knowing that they're shit. And then you're going to go and watch them get smashed every week. Like, it is demoralising. I've barracked for the Bombers for most of my adult life, and and you ran for North as well, so I'm not gonna let you go scot-free as well. But
Hey,
so we understand.
We've played a final before you got
We've played a final too, but winning them is the hard part.
We've won a final too.
Yeah, well done.
They won
Well
a final
done.
against you. It's 2014.
And they wanted,
There you go.
yeah. I wanted to sort of move on from that before you mentioned that, but fine, all right, yes, you can have that against me. But you guys definitely did really well in the finals last year as a Blues fan, going all the way. It took a loss to us to sort of snap back to reality and be like, how the hell can we lose to Essendon with this list?
Yeah. I say to a lot of people, every team has 2 to 3 main players that when they're on, like that team's fucking unstoppable. So, for example, Carlton's 3 main pillars or 3 guys who are like setting the tone is Cripps, Curnow and Sard. So when those 3 guys are playing well, we are an extremely hard team to beat. And those 3 killed it during that period when we won 9 in a row and in the finals. But in the other sense, when those 3 are off and they're playing shit, then we're, an absolute opposite side to what we are, shadow of ourselves. So I think for us was making sure those best players were at their best. I know that sounds like cliche because obviously you want your best players performing,
Of course.
but the fact that those 3 guys were on, and if any team's 3 guys are on, you could say, I don't know, Merritt, Wright, and Langford, for example. Those 3 guys are on, you guys are smashing it. Then anyone can outperform any team. So I think it's about making sure that that top end is playing well.
I think the difference between though, like I get what you mean. Every team definitely has like their trio or duo or quadra. I don't know what the word for the 4 people would be, but you need your best players playing at your best. But I feel like the best team, people like a Collingwood, for example, where their best players weren't necessarily dominating. They had the rest of the team sort of doing enough to carry in those moments to get them to a close enough point where they can challenge and push and get over the top, right, Big Jez?
Well, that's it. And it all comes down to, yes, every team's got good players, but it's the strength of your role players. The guys who maybe aren't on the big bucks, but sometimes have to shoulder a lot of the load, especially when players get tagged or, as you say, Nick, sometimes a Sard or someone has a bad week in the back line. The other guys can jump in and do quite well. It's why teams like GWS are so strong, because they've got 3, 4, 5 guys who are really good, but a lot of guys on cheap money who are developing and then can carry them through those crucial games.
I was actually going to say Collingwood's probably the only team that doesn't have what I was talking about when they need 2, 3 guys to step up for them to be well. Like, obviously being a Carlton fan, obviously I can't stand Collingwood, but the Craig McRae Collingwood, like I actually have to respect them because the way he's turned around that club to make those sort of role players link well together, it's actually so impressive in such a short period of time, what he's been able to do. And I've been saying to people, like, guys like, your Bo McCreary and Oleg Markov, Nathan Murphy, those aren't absolute superstars, but they're so important in playing their role to make other guys shine. Like, for example, Bo McCreary, his link-up play between the midfield, the forward line, is one of the best I've seen in the competition because he's like that middleman. So from, Tom Mitchell, Dacos, Pendlebury side bottom, then to him, and then he goes off to, Elliott, Bobby Hill. He's such an important player for them. So I think as well, obviously your top 3, top 6 is important, but your bottom 6 sort of role players are so important.
Yeah, I've always said as well, look at them versus a North Melbourne, whereas the quality of that player came in, we'd require them to do so much. They'd have to tackle, kick goals, do all these different things versus focus on 1 or 2 particular areas of their game where they're, above average to elite in. Just from how strong the team is itself means that, hey, look, these guys, as you say, could play those roles and just do very well.
That's why St Kilda was so unstoppable during the early Ross Lyon days, like 2010, 2009. They had so many superstars in that side, obviously like Lenny Hayes, Goddard, Del Santo, Rewalt. But the only issue is they didn't have that bottom 6 that could link up the play together. They didn't have that real role player. They had 8 superstars, like, Mill and Rewalt, the guys I mentioned. But as I said, like, you're only as good as your bottom 5, 6 players. And because they didn't have that and they lacked it, they fell short of a flag. And that team was probably the best team ever, in my opinion, not to win a premiership. Like, that team was stacked of superstars.
Yeah, 100%. Is that also seems to be a very similar criticism, or not really a criticism, but an observation that's been made of Carlton in recent times, where you guys have been really strong, very top heavy. Your top echelon is really strong and really, obviously you can, you think that spine is unbelievable. You know what I
It
mean? Like
is,
your spine
it
is
is.
among the best in the league, but then you just haven't been able to translate that into result because, again, the lack of depth there.
Yeah, I think it's obviously what I said before. Like we obviously lack that sort of bottom six role players to help link the team together. We do have guys like Lockie Fogarty. He's a really good forward presence, great tackler. He puts a lot of good forward pressure. Matt Owies, Jordan Boyd, even like Caleb Marchbank, Matt Cottrell. He had a really impressive final series, especially against
Yeah, he
Sydney.
did.
And look, to be honest, those guys actually really stepped up in the back end of the year. And that's why we won so many games. I look at someone like Blake Acres. I'll be honest, I wasn't a fan the first half of the season. I think there was one game, I think it was against Bulldogs, where he had like 12 touches by three-quarter time and 0% efficiency or something like that. But credit to him, his second half of the season was actually unrecognisable.
Yeah.
Like, I went to America mid-year, came back. I think we beat Melbourne, we beat Collingwood, beat St Kilda, like winning all these games. And I'm seeing like Blake, everyone's going on about Blake Acres. Like, this guy doesn't stop running, gets so much of the ball, and then obviously come back, watch the final series. And I was actually watching Blake Acres, like just him solely. And fuck me, he gut runs. He was
Yeah.
running his ass off. Like,
He needed you to leave the country to do that.
literally. And even for a guy who actually, isn't on a big contract as well, he plays with a lot of heart. And even coming in with a broken collarbone, I think it was, or really, really banged up shoulder. He was literally, you could see the way he was running. He was sore, one shoulder. But yeah, like not just Blake Acres, like guys like him. Obviously, like Matt Cottrell lifted, Brody Kemp, Caleb Marchbank even. I think if it wasn't for those guys, then we wouldn't have won all those games in the back in the season. And that's why what you were saying, it's very important for like those type of players to step up for the team to succeed.
There's been a lot of movement in the off-season this year. A lot of people have changed teams. Some, like the Sydney Swans, who are playing in the opening night against Melbourne, they've had quite a few acquisitions.
From Melbourne.
From Melbourne, exactly, who they're playing against. That obviously would improve their bottom six, their list as a overall collective unit. Do you think, and there's been some hype, I think, around the Sydney Swans this year, do you think that the hype is real, that they're going to take that next step and push up higher on the ladder and maybe win a final, maybe contend all the way?
It's the first time they really haven't had like Buddy there, and I think you're going to see a different dynamic with Sydney. When you've got a player who's so polarising like that in your team, and it basically becomes kick it to Buddy, Buddy's the one, running through the middle, running into the forward line, being that marking presence. Him leaving does leave a bit of a gap, and as you say, they brought in players to fix some spots. They do have a few senior players injured as well. I'm pretty happy to say Sydney are going to be top 8. How far they push this year is really going to come down to fixture, but then also just the team itself. They have a lot of young players running through there, and so much academy talent that's been in the team now finally starting to mature and play well.
In actual response to your Buddy statement, I think keeping Buddy around is actually very similar. Now we're crossing codes, but very similar to Cristiano Ronaldo at Man United. You have this older guy who's 35 plus, probably the highest paid at the club, obviously absolute legend early in his career, one of the best players in their respective code. I think, for example, when you see Man United, he was actually toxic for the club culture because he was way past his prime, he wasn't performing, and he expected to be treated, like he was the best player. Not saying Buddy was like that. I haven't really heard anything about that. But I think, when you have these older guys on big money, one of the highest paid in the comp, and he's, a shadow of his former self, I think once they go out of the side and you can focus on your actual younger guys who are in their prime and actually are ready to prove themselves and are yet to do so, I think that's going to be much better for the club culture moving forward. Because obviously your Buddy's a superstar, one of the best forwards of all time. I think now when you got these new guys going to need to prove themselves, that's going to be really good for the culture because you got guys fighting for spots rather than expecting one.
Yeah, 100%. I also think of Kobe Bryant as well for the Lakers. He was definitely got his big paycheck towards the end of his career, as opposed to when he was young. I think he was the most highest paid player in the NBA at that late age, where he obviously wasn't performing as well as probably the paycheck required him to do so. But rest in peace, Kobe. You'll always live in my heart. I love you so much. But we talked about Sydney there. Do you think now, with all these people fighting for this opportunity to prove themselves, to try and improve and get them up the ladder, these highly talented players that we're talking about, they're coming from their academy, do we think that they can get their season off to a great start against Melbourne, who are a lot more established. Their midfield's, rock solid, consistent. It's gone. The usual suspects. It's gone. It's Petrarca. It's Oliver. It's Viney. Can this young Sydney Swans midfield get over the top and break into that top echelon?
Well, they're playing at the moment. We can always check the stats, but
No, that's cheating.
that's true. That's
I want
cheating.
your prediction.
It's going to be a tough one, right? Because pre-season they've had a few players injured and they're still trying to work things out. I think a team like Sydney will be very, very good in the second half or even in the second 2/3 of the season, but it's going to take them a while, especially, I think, in the forward line, for example. If new players come in, it doesn't hurt them as much because it's basically just kick to a forward. Whereas if you're basically coming in and changing a whole team's midfield, kind of their engine room, it's going to take them a little while to get going. And I think maybe Melbourne's the better team for today, but Sydney might end up higher than them on the ladder towards the end of the season and come finals.
Players like Errol taking that next step. He had a massive breakout.
James Jordan getting a space in there as well. Does 100%. Warner come in and take some more spot? What do they do with Parker and Mills out? Like, there's a few kind of questions.
I think getting Adams and Brody Grundy as well, two guys who have very similar stories coming out of their respective former clubs. So you got Adams, didn't play in the grand final team. Obviously, he's got fire in the belly because you watch the way Adams plays. There's no other way. He's either like gear 8 or 0.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that comes to his detriment because he gets injured. But unfortunately, he doesn't know how to play any other way. But you look at someone like him who literally plays with his absolute heart out to miss a premiership for a club he's been at for, I think, 9 seasons. That's only going to motivate him to give another crack this year. And same with Brody Grundy. You got this guy who's once upon a time was the best ruckman in the comp. For him not to even get a game at Melbourne and, obviously Collingwood to ship him off. That's another story where someone's there to prove himself. So with two guys, Adams and Grundy, both former teammates, both got the chemistry linking up to the midfield. I think they're two really, really good gets. Like not just on paper, but just in the more mindset way of things.
I would say James Jordan's almost in that list too.
Premiership player, yeah.
Being always the sub, kind of being overlooked at Melbourne, and now it's like, cool, you guys don't even want me. Like, you didn't give me a contract until like the trade period, things like that. So, yeah, you'll keep me on a 1 or 2 year contract, keep me going, but I can go over to this other club and really show what I can do.
That's why it's really important to have these guys who need to prove themselves. Like, you give an example back to the Blues, like Alex Sincotta or even Oleg Markov, like two guys just snuck into a club list last season, probably question marks over their future. Sincotta was playing in the VFL for the Northern Blues, or Carlton VFL, I should say. Like two guys need to prove themselves, and both had really, really solid seasons. Obviously, Markov a premiership player, and Sincotta played in 3 final series, or I think it was 2. I'm not sure he played in the prelim, but I think it's really important to have guys like Jordan, Adams, Grundy, who actually got something to prove and want to show the competition, that they can do what they're supposed to deliver.
Speaking of have something to prove, I think Melbourne have something to prove as well. I know that there's no denying their talent and the fact that they won the premiership not long ago, but I think there's been a lot made about their culture, how things are being run over there at the club, whether things are in free fall. And then there's quite a few out there who have predicted a slide for Melbourne this year based on all that tumultuousness. Obviously, we don't have to name names, but there are certain individual players that obviously rocked the boat, had their moment in the spotlight in the news outlets. Do we? What do you reckon? I feel like it can go either one of 2 ways. Either they galvanise this Melbourne Demons, they have a real chip on their shoulder, they come out and prove to the AFL that everything's fine, they are the best team in it, or they capitulate under all of that pressure. What do you reckon happens there?
To be honest, I don't think much changes from their season last year, and their season last year was good. The players, as you mentioned, didn't mention, they weren't as strong best 22. It's not like Oliver did, but it's not like Oliver and Petrarca aren't playing anymore, or Max Gawn and things like that. These are guys who are probably bottom 6 of their position that things have happened to. And I think Melbourne have maybe not Goodwin as the best leadership, but inside the club, there's quite a good leadership from Stephen May and a few of these other players who, they'll continue to do really well. And I don't think there was any chance really of a fall off. Just their talent across the board is so good.
If you look at their main core players, so Gawn, Viney, Petrarca, Oliver, Brayshaw obviously now is retired, but if you include him last year, and then Neil Bullen, Tom McDonald, Christian Salem, Well, I'm saying like these guys,
midfield.
not May, but these guys I mentioned have been at the club for 7+ years, 8+ years. I think when Paul Roos coached,
Yep.
those guys were there. So when you got those core players who have played together from 2014 onwards, I believe, to now, I think that's really important because you've kind of grown that chemistry and like sort of brotherhood between these main group of players. And a lot of clubs really have that. I remember West Coast had it in 2018 because they had guys like LaCroix, McGovern, obviously Gaff and Nada knew we were out that side. But if you look at like their main group of players to the midfield, back line and forward line, about 8 to 10 of those had been playing together for around 10 years at that point of time. And they won a flag that year. So I think with Melbourne, with their main group of players, having that bond and longevity of playing for a long period of time together, that's going to help them, still be bulletproof this year. A lot of people writing them off, but I just can't see it happening. Because those guys, they got winning mentality. You look at the previous Melbourne side of old, had a losing mentality. I think the culture's changed now.
I think that was one of the strengths with Richmond when they had their three-peat too. They had a few guys they had got in from Gold Coast and whatnot, but previous to that, they had a big group of players who'd been there for a long time, gone through it and gone through the tough times as well as the good times. And that's when you find, like I play competitive sports, that's what you find, the oomph and the go to keep going.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you got people like Viney, for example, like just never die. You can't keep these guys down. So plus you've got some strong fighters and leadership from their back line when it comes to obviously Stephen May and Lever. This duo, one of the best in the competition. In terms of back line, I suppose on the flip side, in terms of duos, this time in the forward line, I think it'd be hard pressed to find.
Achilles heel.
Is Achilles heel, 100%.
I think Ben Brown and Tom McDonald, their best footies behind them.
Yep.
Josh Shackey.
Ben Brown hasn't played for like 2 years.
Yeah, he's still on the list.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Van Rooyen?
Van Rooyen, yeah, he's an up-and-comer.
He's
And
good.
Petty's doing all right.
And then Petty's kind of like your swingman, but he's not going to kick 6 goals for you.
No.
And obviously Josh Shackey's his third club now, and to be honest, he's lucky to still be an AFL list considering his previous club successes.
Joel Smith did all right.
And then obviously Joel Smith. So, obviously the small forwards are pretty handy with, Pickett, Bailey Fritsch, Neil Bullen can bob up.
Yep.
Spargo.
But with their key forward stocks, they're really missing that guy.
Yep.
I'm really surprised they didn't go hard for Harry Mackay in the off season. I heard they were going to exchange Clayton Oliver and Harry Mackay, which would actually been a good deal for both clubs. Obviously Harry had a pretty poor season with Charlie Curnow already, who's a star. But obviously from a Carlton perspective, you need Mackay on that side to help out Curnow. But if we're looking at Melbourne's point of view, that lack of key forward presence, I think that's the difference between them in winning those finals, those last 4 finals they've lost at the G.
Well, Collingwood doesn't have. I mean, Collingwood have Myercheck.
I'd say actually I
who's a
want to say
gun.
Brody Myercheck's the most underrated player in the comp.
He's an absolute gun.
You look at his statistics; he's kicked the most goals of any forward fifth most goals of any forward since 2018.
There you go.
And that's with some really good company like Jeremy Cameron, Jack Rewalt, Tom Hawkins. So he's in that category of top 5 most goals since 2018, which is actually insane.
Yeah.
Another thing as well, if you actually watch closely when he plays, he gets killed every game.
Yep.
Like he goes in so hard. Like he knocks himself out. Another guy as well got a VFL opportunity, I think at Port Melbourne. Correct me if I'm wrong. Worked his way up, and he's a typical guy that where you're going to get from every single year. Like he's not going to take. He's not going to take his opportunity for granted.
No.
Whereas a guy like, for example, Harry Mackay, top 10 draft pick, always had the size, always had the height. He's always going to be some sort of gifted talent. Brody Myercheck, for example, had to find his way through the ranks, and now he's a premiership player. I think he's been Collins' 5-time leading goal kicker as well, the last 5 seasons. So I'd rate him elite in the key forward category.
Yeah, agreed.
And no offense to Harry Mackay, but I think the Carlton fan base sometimes will talk players like him and Charlie Curnow up quite a lot. And when they don't perform, they get it. But when they do start doing well, it's like, oh, we've got this amazing player, they're doing really well and everything like that. And sometimes it can get to their head. And then you have times, like we've seen in recent times, where the confidence goes down, things like that. Doesn't affect other players. They're like, cool, I'm just here to do a job versus I'm here to be the best player in the team.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know. Harry, if he can sort out that goal kicking accuracy, then obviously they will obviously go
he's
a
a
long
ruckman
way.
now.
But
The frustrating with Harry, the thing about Harry is you look at his size and you'd think a player of his caliber and his physicality that no opposition player will touch him because he's so big, intimidating,
built like
crash
Tarzan,
attack,
players like Jane.
literally. And sometimes I watch him like go up for a mark or go up in a pack, and he's almost playing like he's the smallest guy there.
Yeah.
I don't think he realizes how physically, intimidating he can be.
His brother's the same too. When
Is
he
he?
was at North Melbourne, he'd be the biggest guy there, would rarely come in and take a contested mark, would be happy just to punch it out, would struggle in one-on-ones versus smaller opponents just because he's like, oh, I'm the small kid. I don't know what happened with them in junior footy.
It's something.
But
It's
the
gentle
mentality's
giants.
not there
Yeah,
yet.
they're gentle giants. When you're the biggest in the room, you do get very, suppose self-conscious, and you might cause someone some harm. But speaking of causing harm, do we think there's any risk or any chance that this top four from last year are they going to be harmed by some outside swooping in, like for example, in Adelaide Crows, who a lot of people are touting to fly up the ladder this year? Or do you think the top four from last year is basically set the way it was this year?
I think GWS can make it in.
GWS?
I think their team's good enough, and I think at points they were unlucky. Another year into a lot of players and not really losing any talent this year. I think they're going to be decent. They're going to be pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, they had a slow start last year,
Yeah.
so we're trying to get used to the Kingsley game style. Obviously, it's a new culture. He came from Richmond. Obviously, very different to Lyon before. So Leon Cameron, should I say, not Lyon? Sorry, Leon.
Everyone's different to Leon Cameron.
Everyone's different to Leon Cameron, exactly. So for them to get that adjustment started slow, they lost to us. If you're losing to Essendon, you're going through a slow adjustment there. But they came on really strong. They almost beat the Pies, if not for Toby Green's kick from the pocket of being marked in the goal square. Could have been a win for the Giants. Do you see the Giants pushing top four this year?
Yeah, I think Melbourne and Port Adelaide go out. I got Collingwood, Carlton, Brisbane, and actually Adelaide top four as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think they'll
I had a
boost up.
feeling. I had a feeling.
Yeah, even Sydney, if I'm being honest, even might sneak in. Obviously now you've got big injuries to start the season. Full side on paper, they're top four. But yeah, I think Melbourne and Port's the about. But I think if we go on the other end to the bottom four, I think one side that everyone's writing off this year, which I actually find pretty ridiculous, is Richmond. Because if you look at their side, there's 15 of their starting 22 who are premiership players still. 15. It's a lot of players.
That's a lot of players.
That's 2/3. And you add on Hopper and Tarrant on top of those, who are both top 10 draft picks, both freaks at their best. Last year, your key forward gets injured, Tom Lynch, your best key forward. Your next best thing is a 34-year-old re-roll who's washed up and finished. How are you going to expect to kick goals from that side? And then I think another thing as well that they thought they were going to do is like similar to the last dance in the Chicago Bulls when all those players like Jordan and Pippen were ending the end of their careers and they thought, okay, we're going to have one last shot at winning a title. I think re-signing Rewald and Cochin when they were both clearly finished, they thought, look, we're getting Hopper and Taranto. If we can re-sign Cochin and Rewald on lower contracts, I reckon we could sneak in one more flag. Obviously, started the season shockingly, realised wasn't meant to be. Hardwick goes, and then they go down shit quick. But now I think with a new coach, obviously Adam Uze is highly respected. You get Tom Lynch back. If he stays fit, I think they can sneak in the 8.
Wow.
I really can.
That's a big
I really
call.
can.
That's a big call.
Because you got back to that premiership experience. You got 15 players there.
Yeah.
Vlosten, Grimes, Jaden Short. Dusty had a great season last year. Averaged 25 and a goal. Tom Lynch, Shai Bolden, Rioli, Nank.
Yeah, but Grimes
Prestia.
is what? Grimes' tires are grimy now.
True.
At this point.
He's probably similar to Cochin and Rewalt last year. But
Yeah.
like, don't write Dusty off. He had a great season last year.
Dusty's a gun. You can't write off Dusty. No,
He's
he's
missing
great.
round 1.
He's missing round 1.
I can't see.
They wrote him off in round 1.
I can't see Rewalt. Tom Lynch having a shit season.
Yeah.
If he stays fit.
I still think Prestia's got a lot to give. I still think, their backline, Vlosten, Broad, Short, Rioli, like those 4 guys played in the premiership, even Baker, and you got guys in the wing like McIntosh, great role player.
Yeah.
My only thing with Richmond is, yes, as you say, they've got all those quality players who did play in the premierships and won. I just don't rate how good their young players are.
Okay.
And I think there's probably a year or two that they need. And the top 8 this year, there's probably 10 to 11 teams that should be in the top 8 this year. And I think Richmond is just outside of that.
If they're a bottom 4 side, then
Like, not bottom 4, but I don't think they'll be making finals.
majority of people are saying bottom 4. If they're a bottom 4 side, they're the best bottom 4 side on paper I've ever seen.
I don't think that it's necessarily an indictment on them if they finish bottom 4. I definitely think that the level of the competition as a whole is certainly improving. If we get into a point where we look at the bottom 4 from last year, you had Hawthorn who were in there, and they were capable of beating Collingwood
And Brisbane. Yep,
you know what I
other
mean?
teams.
You also had, I think, Gold Coast were the 4th last team, and they were, I think, 2 games away from being a game outside of the 8. So I think they're like 3 or 4 games away from 8th spot. So even then, finishing in the bottom 4 isn't necessarily, I think, an indictment of you're a shit team. I just think that the level of the competition as a whole has improved. I think the only 2 real shit teams from last year were the bottom 2 teams. No disrespect. North Melbourne and West Coast. I think they were the only 2 genuine shit teams. But even then, North still should have been in Sydney, if not for the interchange infringement.
Yep.
Probably should have been in us.
Yep.
West Coast probably shouldn't have been in us.
And West Coast beat Dogs.
And the Western, exactly. So even then, the 2 shittest teams in the comp last year, on their day, could beat teams that on paper were definitely better. So I think if Richmond finish in the bottom 4, if they finish 14th or 15th, I don't necessarily think that's an indictment on them, but more so just that the AFL has done a good job, I suppose, elevating the level of the competition.
I heard something on the radio a couple of days ago that was like, this year there's 16 teams that could make the top 8. Like, and I think that's pretty fair. Maybe not Hawthorn as much, but they were beating top 8 teams pretty easily. So
They were
depends.
playing like a top 8 team.
It's just injuries that are going to kill them.
Footy's not like what it used to be, where you knew he was going to win and that's
Yeah.
it. Nowadays, it's so evenly matched. It's actually ridiculous. Like
That's what makes it fun.
you'll go into like a Gold Coast versus Melbourne game or Gold Coast versus Brisbane. You generally still don't know really certainty who's going to win.
What about Gold Coast versus Richmond in round 0? Who wins that one? The
I think-
Dimmer Hardwick Cup.
I think Gold Coast because they're home. I
Yeah.
think if it was at the MCG, Richmond win. But I got Richmond between 10 and 12 wins. I can't see him doing. I just can't see it because they got the new coach as well, fresh face. Your best key forward back. Okay, he's been injured. His foot was cooked last year, but I just can't see him doing crap. Honestly, I honestly can't.
Well, there you go.
And you look at those MCG games, like they still got like a very very good MCG record. I can't see
that
him.
they do.
Like I just think If you had told me, okay, you take Presti out, you take Dusty out, you take Nate Curvis out, those 3 guys in the midfield, I'd say, okay, yeah, bottom 4. But
And Curvis battling plantar fascia in his foot now.
Yeah.
That's pretty persistent, and that can flare up every now
Nate
and then.
Smith is serviceable, and all you need is serviceable. Richmond's proved that in premierships. Nate
I think
Curvis
he's a
isn't
really
a
good
top
player.
2 ruck
He
in
is
the
a good
AFL.
player.
But like, as long as you've got someone who can jump and tap the ball and take a mark around the ground, you're all right.
Yeah, exactly. So we've spoken about Collingwood and GWS
What
as
happens-
individual players.
What happens to Brisbane, Nick? Where are you expecting
Yes,
Brisbane? We haven't
thank
talked
you.
to Brisbane. Everyone else.
Correct.
We haven't got any Brisbane. It's a tough one. It's similar to Geelong. And I hate the fact that Brisbane now has turned into, the Geelong of old, where they're playing home, just pencil them in for 12 wins plus. What do you think about Brisbane this year?
I can't see Brisbane even dropping even.
I know, that's
Yeah.
what I hate.
Because
I hate that.
again,
Why?
back to what
I
I'm
was
saying.
just like, I like...
Back to what I'm saying about Richmond. You look at those core players; they're still there playing their best footy.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had Dode in the back, so he'll replace Gardner. I'm not sure if he'll go third tall, but you get that key defender in. I rate him very
Let's
highly.
make the team
Yes.
better.
Doty. Look, they're still going to be top 4.
Ashcroft to come
They're
back
just
still
not.
as well.
Ashcroft to come back. Look, people writing off Joe Danaher. He kicked 50 plus goals last year. You had in
Judas.
Charlie Cameron as well.
Judas Danaher.
Even guys like Dunkley running to the midfield. Jared Lyons more of a role player. He's probably playing sub.
Yeah. And if like Hipwood can start actually kicking goals, that's just another outlet that the team gets better and better. Because he had shots and goals, they were just behind.
If they can win more than 3 games away from home this year, then they finish top 4. That obviously, because they're not losing at the Gabba.
No.
So you got to find those 3 wins. If they're playing away against North,
Probably.
hopefully, or even away against West Coast,
West Coast, yeah.
then that's 2 wins there, and they'll probably nab one against another side somewhere on the road. So you get 3+ wins away, pencil in for top 4 because they're not losing more than 2 at home.
Are they doing one better this year? Every Brisbane fan I've spoken to, all 3 of them that I know of, sorry, that I know, there's more than 3 Brisbane fans, but don't at me, okay? All the 3 that I've spoken to, they all reckon they're going to win the flag this year.
No, they can't win at the G. If the grand final was at Gabba this year, I'd just literally cancel the season.
Yeah.
But they can't win at the G. And you look at the Gabba dimensions of their ground, much smaller than the G. The way they utilise it, even though they played well on grand final day, they fell 4 points short. Sorry. I just can't see him. I can't see him winning a game with the G. I just don't see it. But they'll go deep in finals, prelim, maybe grand final again. But
I believe in them. I honestly was like that last year. I said, there's no way. They have to win the G. You can't win the premiership if you can't win at the MCG. I feel like they lost again. They lost to the Hawks. They lost to Melbourne. 2 games that they really should have won. They were in commanding positions and they dropped those. And then again, they just fell short at the death against Collingwood in that grand final. I do think that these are all learning experiences. Surely they can get over it.
But aside making the grand final and then trying to do one better, how do I explain it? So aside trying to make a grand final and falling short doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to make the grand final.
Correct.
Even if they've gotten a better squad, okay, they could lose a game somewhere where they were lucky to win last year. They could lose that qualifying final. They could lose that game that got them into the final.
Not at the Gabba though.
I have them penciled in for top 4 and making top 4 finals, but it's anyone's game at that point. There's going to be very, very good teams, and there's going to be 4 very, very good teams. Something happens to Carlton, they win their game, they're in the finals. That could happen the opposite way to Brisbane. Maybe Joe Danaher has a bad day, or they get a couple of injuries in the final series, or something happens. Heck, I don't know what they do if they lose McInerney. If McInerney goes down and misses
Darcy
a few...
Fort.
I don't think Darcy Fort's serviceable, man. Darcy Fort.
I reckon he is.
Nah,
So he's not ahead of the big guy. Of course.
They do have some question marks there across the board. It's very, very limited. But if they miss out on a couple of players or have some bad form in a couple of players, teams have done crazy things and tagged players out of nowhere. And you might see Zach Bailey getting tagged, and they don't have a run through the middle anymore to kick goals. So it could happen.
Oh, they got so many people. They got Lincoln McCarthy as well. I mean, they got so many players at the Brisbane Lions forward of centre. I think they're honestly just stacked, and they can put Charlie Cameron on the ball. Everyone else is putting these electric smalls around the ball, the Papley style, Cosy Pickett. Obviously, Charlie Cameron can get into there. Adelaide are now incorporating more of those smalls like Rochelle and Rankin. We're going to see a bit more of those. You had Adelaide sneaking into your top 4, you were saying. So you reckon they can take that next step, obviously?
Yeah. A lot of people wrote him off last year because they looked at their older sort of players like Tex Walker and thought, okay, they're finished, who's going to kick their goals? But Tex kicked 75 goals last year. I expect him to not kick 75, but I think he'll come top 5 in the Coleman again. Because his game doesn't really rely on, him to be, up and about and require the physical capacity of a young player. He's kind of like strength, pushes his opponent out of the way, mark.
Last of the old forwards, I think.
Yeah.
Him and probably Charlie Dixon.
And Tom Hawkins, probably.
Tom Hawkins, yeah.
You put Jeremy Cameron in that as well. Tom Lynch, they're 30 plus. But yeah, Tom Hawkins and Tex Walker. I think another thing with him as well is he makes the most of his set shots. So he might only get 3 set shots a game, but he'll kick all 3. So he's clinical. So that really helps as well. Because when you got midfielders working their ass off trying to pump the ball in, running, tackling, getting up again and trying to create chance for the forwards, and they're not kicking it like Harry Mackay is, then that's going to affect team morale. How many times you see Cripps, Walsh, Kennedy, Hewitt, Chera pumping the ball in on and on. Mackay takes a mark, misses 15 metres out. And you're you Paddy Cripps, you're like, for fuck's sake, I've literally, pumped the ball in. We've worked as a training. We're trying to get clearances on and on and on. And you can't just throwing a bloody axe at a brick wall. It's not budging. It's not budging because he's putting all this effort in for no reward. So back on to what I was saying about Adelaide is because their forward line is clinical and you add in their midfield stocks, obviously Jordan Dawson, I rate him elite.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's top 10 midfielder in the comp.
Yep.
You add him in there and you got clinical forwards and if Texas kicking goals, you got ranking at his feet, then they're a top 4 side.
Who misses then?
top 4.
And top 8.
Top
Because
eight.
they weren't top 8 either. So someone has to come out for them to come in.
Yeah.
St Kilda.
So
St Kilda?
So St Kilda, Port, Port and Melbourne finished out of top 4, but
Yep.
I think
But
top
in the
8.
Yep.
In the 8, I think Saints come out. Giants will do well this year. I think Carlton stay in.
Yep.
Sydney, I got top 4.
Yep.
I don't see.
So someone else. Oh, yeah, you
So
already got two out. Yep.
it'll be Port and St Kilda to come out for me.
Port and St Kilda.
Yeah.
Port went on a very hard recruiting run.
Yeah, they did.
Recruiting a bunch of
They're-
2 ruckmen.
Well, they recruited players who couldn't get a game with their
Yeah,
sides.
sweet. Oh, Soldo could for Richmond. They pried him out of there, I think. So they got Sweet and Soldo.
Zerk Thatcher. And
Zerk
someone
Thatcher from
else.
the Bombers, who we wanted to keep. And Asava, who
Geelong
Couldn't get a
pretended they
game.
wanted to keep.
Geelong pretended 100%. They Geelong know how to fleece someone so
They
well,
got
don't
they got 2, arguably 3 fringe players from other clubs. I don't think they're going to improve this year. If I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah. They have tried to fill positions in their team, though, that they haven't had. Like, the young kids going through the forward line have been okay, and obviously Charlie Dixon's there going through if he's fit. The ruck line, they've never had a ruckman. I don't think that I've rated for like a long time since I've been really following footy. And then the back line's had some trouble. Ali can't do it all by himself. So bringing in some extra players to at least get some depth. Maybe it's just like the team dynamic, and potentially this is the year that Hinkley gets the boot, even
think
though
it's
he's
Ken.
been
I think it
given
is time.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Given, I think he's got 2 years, so this year and next year, but he could be out the door.
Been there for a long time.
He has been for a long time without anything really being achieved, some straight set exits. And now, according to your prediction, even the top 8 exits.
I like
he's gone.
Hinkley because you hear him speak in press conferences. He really backs his players in, like really, really highly. A lot of coaches and especially players, when it comes to AFL, they're very scared to voice their opinion.
Yeah.
That's why I love seeing press conferences from like NFL, for example, because no one gives a shit, or even UFC, because they just say what they actually think, and they don't care if they're gonna get judged. Whereas Ken Hinkley, he's one of those rare guys in AFL where he just says what he wants. Like for example, someone would say to him, are you worried about this Richmond side you're coming up against? And he's like, well, I think they should be worried about a Port Adelaide side they're coming up against with us.
Yeah.
He's got that real swagger as a coach. Like he's not afraid to admit, yeah, we're good and I think we're going to win and I back my players in. But there's only so long you can have that voice in the change rooms before players are like, okay, hang on, I need a new fresh face.
Yeah.
Similar with Damien Hardwick,
Yeah.
who's been there for 10 plus years. You need a new fresh face. And I think even Luke Berridge as well. He's probably on his last legs too because he's been there for, I think he's 9th or 10th year as well. So there's only so long you can have a guy with the same personality, same coaching style, telling you how things are going to go until it's going to go one in and out the other.
Put Justin Longmuir in there as well, you reckon?
Oh, he's gone.
Justin Longmuir was gone?
Yeah.
They're going to get Bevo?
I think Simpson's gone too. Adam
I have a
Simpson.
question for you, right?
There'll be an excess of coaches this year.
If you have a coach who, let's say, has had 10 years, but they won a premiership or 2 in the middle, do the players get more tired at the end of that 10 years? Or is it someone like a Hinkley where they've been close and then they've still got the fire because they haven't won it? Which one do you think they get sick of first?
Well, you look at Greg Popovich from San Antonio Spurs. He's been there for 30 years.
Yeah, Pops.
Won heaps of trophies. Now they're doing shit house. Surprised they're still keeping him.
Yeah.
Because they finished, I think, bottom 3 last season. But yeah, I think if you're winning flags, then who cares? Like Kevin Sheedy did it. He stayed there for ages.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's all results driven.
Yeah.
It's a results driven.
No, but I mean, like, they won their flags and now they've gone down a bit. Like Hardwick, right? Hardwick left
And
because
Bevo.
the players... And Bevo should have been gone
But I
last
think
year.
it also depends on the board and where the club itself sees its list.
That's fair.
Like if the club sees it as, oh yeah, we're still in the window. We see that you as a coach are still developing
Bloody
and going the
Koshy.
right way. Yeah,
good old
exactly.
Koshy
Like
still-
Koshy on Sunrise every time, with Koshy with his cash cow. You know what I mean? Like but I think a lot of it also comes down, the alignment of the team, alignment of the board with the list. Whether or not they're, I suppose, in sync. Like I know at the Bombers, for example, speaking close to home, it hasn't been in sync in recent years, so we wiped everything out, starting fresh, starting new. And I think, though, that eventually these board members, as long as they keep trying to back in this person, they're not seeing results. Like, for example, Ken Hinkley, who has taken his team, done really well in the home and away season, but they're just falling short in the finals, even at home. in home preliminary finals. It's supposed to be a fortress for him, but they haven't got the job done. Eventually, time's like, all right,
They'll get teared apart.
time to go. Oh, they won't get torn apart. It'll just be the coach with the hope of a new face reinvigorating. I mean, Carr, what was his first name? Josh Carr? Someone that is like who's sort of being like touted as the next person
Yeah, I think so.
to come in to replace Hinckley. It was widely reported that this guy's going to be next in line. It's not a question of when, it's a question of if. So, it's all this talk of doom and gloom can also rub away at the fabric of a club because the coach himself is under immense pressure, and that's why I have a lot of respect for Carlton and sticking with Voss. Where
You can't
in the
keep sacking
past-
coaches. You can't keep doing
exactly,
it.
because you've done it so often. It's been rinse and repeat. You've had a caretaker coach who comes in, looks good, we give him a contract, and then we sack him when things get real. You don't give him
North
time.
Melbourne.
Dumbest
Yeah.
thing Carlton did was appointing David Teague, because we're actually interested in Voss in the back end of 2019 when we sacked Bolden, and I think that was the perfect time to get him. Then we go for a guy who's won like 7 games as caretaker coach, and
Yep.
we think he's the next Mick Moldhouse, which he pretty much was, because he came in for 2 years and did fuck all. But yeah, like you can't keep sacking coaches. Like you get Brendan Bolden, he's there for like this rebuild to like nurture these young guys coming through, like the Wiederings, Mackay's, and Kernos, which he did, to be fair. But that's to his full capacity. Like after that, he's not a game day coach. He's just that guy to like, he's a school teacher kind of type of coach. And then you get David Teague, who pretty much kept us stagnant. But then you get Voss, who's got premiership experience, 3-time premiership player, who the players are actually going to listen to. So it also depends on who you get to replace, because we had Bolden and Teague who weren't champion players. Like Bolden never played and Teague only played 80 games. But then you replace those guys with a Voss, 200 plus games, Brownlow, flags, captain, great
Everything.
resume. Guys are going to listen to him over Brendan Bolden.
Yeah.
As harsh as it may sound, you're not going to take a guy like Brendan Bolden seriously when he hasn't done what you're doing before. Because the whole point of mentorship is you learn of someone who's done what you've done before 10 times better and has been in your shoes before. And he's going to tell you the fuck-ups they made so you don't do the same fuck-ups. And who's going to guide you on the path that they went, because they know exactly what you're going through.
Yeah.
Brendan Bolden never had that. He never played the game. If he's
Why
listening-
for Collingwood had that?
why would Patrick Cripps listen to Brendan Bolden when he can't relate to him? Oh, yeah, that he's not going to say, yeah, Cripps, I know what you're feeling. I had that same feeling back in the day when I versed. No, never played the game. So it's really important, answering your question, is not necessarily sacking too many coaches, but having the right guy who's actually got a respectable resume in the same field as what you're trying to achieve something in.
And I think as well, maybe not have played to a huge extent, but you've got your guys like Hardwick and Clarkson who have taken a young team and taken teams to multiple premierships.
He's an outlier. I think Clarkson
they
wasn't
say,
like
hey.
a superstar player, but he's an
No.
outlier. But so
Yeah.
what he's done is really impressive. But yeah, for example, Hardwick, like he was a premiership player. Players don't listen to him regardless. So
Yeah, especially the young kids who are like, yeah, this guy's actually done it before. Check out the players, check out the team, made a dynasty. So
well, it's just Michael Voss. Long story short, you're not gonna fuck with him. Like you're just not. Like you're just not. You're just gonna respect him. You're gonna you want to try put your best foot forward for a guy like that, because that's who these guys want to be like and who these guys idolized growing up.
I'd say Ross the Boss is sort of similar, has that no mess attitude. You don't want to mess with Ross Lyon.
You need to have intimidation with your coach, because if he's going to let shit go, then players are going to fuck around.
They're not your friends. This is your coach.
Yeah.
This is your leader. You're supposed to listen to what they have to say, respect their instructions, buy in, fully trust into what is being built here, a system, a culture. You're not supposed to be like, oh yeah, all buddy. And you feel like a lot of times when that dynamic isn't there, that clubs are very easily derailed. They don't show that discipline on the field, for example. I think that's part of the reason why the Sydney Swans have been strong for so long, because, John Longmire is someone who demands respect as well. Chris Scott, he was a player. He demands respect of his team. He respects his players, but he also expects that we're going to follow and listen to what he has to say. I think Brad Scott, to an extent as well, obviously not to the level of the previous players, but the other previous coaches, but these ex-players who were tough nuts, hard nuts at the contest, you know what I mean? Like, they want to say something and you have to listen to them.
yeah, I think in general, just every manager that I've had that's been successful at a successful company has been, cool, I'll be friendly with you, but I'm not your friend. Like, you're under me, and if we start being buddy-buddy, things like that, you lose that kind of respect a little bit as well. And it's like, well, cool, we're friends, you won't tell me off, I can trust that, you won't get me in trouble, things like that. And sometimes like you ask them to do something and they'll be like, nah, sorry. I'm like, well, I'm your boss, but I've lost that respect.
Sam Mitchell, I think, demands that same respect. You're going to be one of the best coaches in the league. But on that note, I think we're looking to be the best channel in the league here, guys. So if you haven't subbed already to FanCast, please chuck us a subscription. We're in a new space. We're looking to improve and get even better than we did before. So please come along for the ride, because here at FanCast, we have a footy proper chat. A footy proper chat. That's how well we do it. Yeah. And no one picked up on that. It's a proper footy chat.
I picked up on it.
You picked up on that?
Yeah, I was just going to let you say it again.
All right, good to know, guys. Yeah, so very professional, very professional. Nick, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on, my friend.
No worries, and thanks for having me on. Best of luck with the channel moving forward. Keep doing your thing, and I'm sure I'll see you guys in the future.
Where can we find you?
You can find us Back to the Bench TV on Instagram, same on TikTok as well. For your short form content related to Aussie rules, and big season ahead, and looking forward to it, and hopefully the best team wins.
30,000?
Yeah, just hit 31, get it right.
31? Oh, apologies, jeez.
Nah,
you're moving up too quick.
It's been pretty cool last 2 months or so in terms of growth. Instagram especially. Learning every day still, implementing new strategies, and just like with anything, man, you're going to throw shit at the wall, you're going to see what sticks, and that's what we did for a long period of time, and you guys are going to do that as well. You're going to throw shit at the wall. Some stuff's not going to stick, some stuff's going to just slip off, but some stuff will stick, and you'll find it works. So, just keep going, and you'll find what works for you, and stick with that.
Thanks so much, man. Don't throw us at a wall, guys, please. It really hurts.
Or shit.
Or shit.
Don't throw shit at us too.
That too. See you all in the next one, guys.